Hey, and welcome back to Wolverine Live. We're here with you tonight talking Michigan football. I'm John Borton. Right here is the man, Tom Crawford, who has dedication unknown to mankind, in
Ooh.
that today is Tom Crawford's birthday, and here he is grinding away at the labor of love that we call Wolverine Live and Michigan football. Tom Crawford, first of all, happy birthday. Understand that you were out water skiing in the wee hours and who knows what else.
Yeah. Yeah. I see. Well, it's a labor of love indeed. And I do what I do passionately, every day. So, I was up on the water at 6:55 this morning, skied a couple sets, did a radio interview with Pat Hayes out in the middle of the water, sneaked that in between sets. Okay. Inside the cave. Okay. Did that. And went for a walk with my neighbor. I'm going to have some lemon meringue pie, my favorite pie, and I'm talking Wolverines twice today. It's a full day. It's a heck of a day, as Jimmy Valvano would say, right?
Right. And if you'd have told me it was going to be lemon meringue, I'd have made a surprise drop in on you.
And now I'm 67, so everything I when I so this is a Reggie McKenzie birthday because everything about my birthdays is typically a football number or a basketball number. So Reggie McKenzie was 67 for the Wolverines All American. Last year was 1971. He was in that Jim Brandsetter class. They lost their last game of his, that Rose Bowl. They lost to Stanford 13-12. Otherwise, a perfect season. They were 11-0 going into that. So it's a happy Reggie McKenzie birthday for me.
There you go. And it makes it two All Americans. Reggie McKenzie as an offensive lineman, Tom Crawford talking about Michigan football. So let's jump.
Okay.
We both were down in Indy this past week, and
Mm-hmm.
there were all kinds of people to talk to. My question to you is just give us some of your initial reactions to what you heard and saw down at the Big Ten football meetings.
Well, obviously, what the 800-pound gorilla in the room was, how's Harbaugh going to react? And that was his gig was on Thursday, as we know, to the projected 4-game suspension. And Adam Rittenberg asked that question. We all knew that it was just going to be swatted away in a nice way. I thought Harbaugh handled it very well with Adam. I love to talk about it, but I can't. So that kind of did become as big of a story, John, as I thought it would. To me, the biggest takeaway by David Braun, the DC, the interim head coach at Northwestern, in the Friday podiums, scrum. You got Ryan Day typically goes 5 deep around him, but the Northwestern podium was as much, if not more, than Ohio State because of what are you going to get David Braun to say? And I was over there a good portion of that head-to-head battle. He was amazing. That dude was set up to fail, and he couldn't really say anything, but it's how he positively, deflected. Or answered as best he could, and with a positive tone. And I think they got the right guy from at least a public relations standpoint of handling the press. He did an amazing job. He's a young guy, and he just got hired into this program like last January. I don't think he and his wife knew what they were getting into, but it will be interesting to see how that plays out. That was a big thing that stood out. And then also, and I think we're going to talk about this later in the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes these stories break, at Big Ten media days about some of these starting times. I never remember Michigan football having as many as 8 games established starting times in July, and the proposed 95% of whatever it is 7:30 kickoff, Michigan State at Spartan Stadium, and Mel Tucker saying we'll be there, kind of playing the he kind of played the hard, kind of the more not mean spirited, but kind of like
Tough guy.
chip on his shoulder kind of deal. And Harbaugh kind of took a more flowery approach to it. We're diplomatic approach. I don't know, that's going to be brutal, but I just love being down there like you, because I like Ryan Walters, the producer. I just move around and see how people communicate. and what they say about their program and get a pulse from it. And there's no better place for that than Big Ten Media Days.
Yeah, and I agree with you on Jim Harbaugh in particular and how he handled things. I told anybody that asked me, we got good Jimmy this time around.
We did get good Jimmy. That's a perfect way to describe it.
Good Jimmy will be engaging. He'll be funny. He'll be insightful. He will be loquacious. He will handle everything with a fair amount of geniality. He doesn't always choose that as the season ramps up and he gets in situations where he knows people are coming after him, or just he's in a mood. But we got good Jimmy throughout. And even when he talked about the when it was asked about the NCAA potential sanctions, potential suspension, I thought he framed it really well. He said, I would love to be able to talk about it. Nothing to be ashamed of.
Right.
At some point, I'll be able to talk about it, but I can't talk about any aspect of it. And that was it. And he was asked a few more times later on, and he said, same answer. I can't talk about any aspect of it, even though I'd like to. So it was just, and then, we went to, but the very first question I got to ask him, what's the next step for JJ McCarthy?
Yeah.
And I mean, he took that and ran with it, talking about comparisons to Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah, that was a little.
I think I understand what he meant when he said, look at these guys and how they interact with their teammates.
Yeah.
And how their teammates react to them.
Yeah.
And that's how it is with JJ McCarthy. So I don't know that he was necessarily saying that JJ McCarthy was going to be better than those two NFL quarterbacks, but he likes the proper attitude and interaction in his team. And he sees that in the leadership of JJ McCarthy. There's no question about it.
Yeah. You nailed that perfectly. And the timing of this, there was this series called The Quarterback, and I got it off Netflix. And I was watching it featured Kirk Cousins, Patrick Mahomes, and Marcus Mariota, and behind the scenes. And so Marcus Mariota, they follow him going all the way to the Super Bowl. And I watched this after that comment that you brought out of Harbaugh about comparing him to Patrick Mahomes. And it wasn't just, I mean, on the field, you see some stuff that JJ does that could evolve into Patrick Mahomes level, if you know what I mean. He does so many of the similar things, obviously not with the experience and refined talent, but it's there. But it's the locker room stuff like you're talking about. He's got to be the most engaging Michigan quarterback I can remember like ever, and in a leadership role. And this team's got a ton of leaders. Oh my God. As Harbaugh talked about, there could have been 30 guys that played that 3-rep of the 3 reps that were there. And Mikey Sainristil, Blake Corum, and Chris Jenkins. I mean, there's 27 others plus could have done that role, including JJ McCarthy. And that's a great comparison. But we'll see how that plays out. But he checks a lot of the Patrick Mahomes boxes. Indeed.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. And by extension, some Tom Brady boxes. You ask Brady's former teammates about him, and they absolutely loved him. They loved how he interacted. They loved how he brought people together, fired people up. And JJ McCarthy is well aware of where Tom Brady played his football. It was interesting. They set up a photo that JJ McCarthy's mom took. It was Jim Harbaugh shaking hands with JJ McCarthy. And it was, like I said, it was right outside his office. And on the wall behind them was a very similar pose with Tom Brady and Jim Harbaugh.
Yeah.
When he was in one time. So, I mean, it was just like, okay, that's the perfect setup there. He's a kid that has all kinds of confidence, all kinds of poise, and I loved his reaction when it was tossed to him. Okay, Jim Harbaugh mentioned you in the same sentences as those two guys, Mahomes and Josh Allen. And basically, JJ's response was, "Look, I emulate those guys,
Yeah.
but I'm trying to surpass them. I'm trying to outdo them. You know,
That's pretty
forget
ambitious.
I think that, like I said, Jim Harbaugh intended it, talking about a locker room type of thing. JJ McCarthy, it is I get a measure of his confidence, a measure of his swagger, that he hears that and doesn't wave it off and say, "Oh, no, 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 those guys, I'll never be those guys." And he says, "Look, I'm trying to be better than they are."
Well, part of being better than they are eventually will be decision making. I mean, JJ, since his freshman year, uh, swashbuckler, he's not afraid of making a mistake. And then we're looking at the TCU a clip right there. I mean, the TCU game, he made a couple bad decisions that cost them the game. Now he was terrific in the second half, but I think that in that maturation process for JJ McCarthy, what I'm going to be looking for this year are not ill-advised, mistakes out there. I mean, he's got to clean that stuff up. That's going to cost his team, and sometimes you're going to have to eat the football. Sometimes you're going to have to run out of bounds, and not just try to make a play all the time. And so, I think that will come in. I think we will see that. I would expect that this year.
Yeah, and I was doing an interview earlier today and said very much the same thing. The questioner asked, what does Michigan have to do to play at a championship level? And I simply said it's correct the major errors that were made in that TCU game. You can't have those, and that counts for the offensive side, the pick sixes. It goes on the defensive side, which you've talked at length about, the mistakes they made there, the overcommitments and the big plays that they gave up. That's where you really start with your preparation for this season. How can we, when we get to the very best teams, how can we avoid those sorts of things that dug a hole just big enough that despite a furious comeback by Michigan, they couldn't overcome?
Yeah. And so it's you're reeling JJ in, making good decisions, and we won't know about how that litmus test of that until he gets into these big games. And these big games, unfortunately, are going to take a while to become big games. Hope they're not big games the first five, or first four rather. But that fifth game at Nebraska, he might have to make plays. You
Yep.
just never know. And obviously at Michigan State, now that game's moved at night, that could be a test. Naysayers will say, "Hey, Michigan's schedule, they don't play anybody till November 11th, so we won't even know how good they are till November 11th." And cynics will say that, and I sometimes say that, but I think they're going to be tested before that, and I hope they are tested, because that's what's going to make you a better football player in JJ McCarthy, ultimately a better football team for the Michigan Wolverines.
Yeah, you play a road game in the Big Ten. Don't even.
Yeah, Minnesota's another one. This isn't Swiss cheese kind of challenge.
Right.
Yeah, granted, those are not top caliber teams as we look at right now, but those environments are gonna present challenges that Michigan needs to endure.
Absolutely. Getting back to Indianapolis for a moment, what was the most interesting one-on-one conversation that you engaged in down in Indy, as far as somebody maybe you got off to the side, or just something that you got that was unique?
Well, I talked a lot to Blake on three long-ended questions in the booth, but I got Blake heading after we were all done, and we did Jack Ebley and I did a radio show. So I'm walking out telling, "Here's Blake." We're walking out with Blake, and I needed to feel that blue velvet on that jacket. Oh, I love this jacket. A little hot outside, but I got that, because it was like 97 degrees when we walked out of Lucas Oil Stadium.
Hmm.
But he got that out of some retail store I don't know if it was State Street and Liberty, somewhere around there. I forgot where he mentioned it, but he is such an engaging young man. He really is. And one of the conversations I had with him in the scrum is how he talks about his the running group, the position group meeting area, that he has every day. The running back room is deep. Let's just say it. And I asked him if Mike Hart, you guys are veteran. Donovan is in his third year. How much input does he allow you into this thing? Because you got so many, these potent tools. I mean, Blake Corum, Donovan Edwards. I mean that's that and JJ McCarthy. There's a lot of tools there. He says, oh, he allows us to be creative. He takes our input. It's going to be interesting to me how those. I got the indication both of them are going to be on the field at the same time. Innuendo was there. It's not just going to be either or. And so I think we're going to see maybe we'll see Blake Corum in the slot. And I asked him blatantly, okay, last year, Blake, 26, 30 carries a game, right? You loved it. You said, I love it. Give me 40. Remember those post-game pressers? It's just, I'd be happy with 10. I'd be happy with 5. Just win. And so he was, he was straight on honest with me. I mean, this guy doesn't care. He just wants to help his team win. And I'm getting the feel it's probably going to be a 15 to 18 carry Blake Corum we're going to see this year. Maybe the same amount for Donovan. Who knows? But I think there's going to be some creativity and using all that talent. And probably later on in bigger games, we'll see it, utilized more often.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And there's the jacket. You talked about how he did need to take it off before he went outside because it was
hot.
broiling. But I was envying him a little bit in the heavy air conditioning.
Oh yeah, like 62 indoors, 97 out. I mean, what's that about? I mean, it's this way every year. You have to put on sweatshirts to go indoors.
Yeah, it's for the suit and tie guys, I guess.
Yes, yeah.
And my most interesting one-on-one conversation came with none other than a Big Ten reporter, analyst, commentator, very well known to Michigan fans, one Mr. Jake Butt. And
he's Jack had him on the show. That dude has got he's got a high ceiling, man, in this video.
No doubt.
He's really, really good.
Really good. And to talk to him about Michigan, here's a guy that played on Jim Harbaugh's first 2 teams, including one that came that close to doing what these teams the past 2 years have done, and very well could have. And so we had a very interesting conversation that's going to go. I'm saving most of it for the Wolverine magazine next this month's issue that's going right in my column. But I'll share with you one snippet of it. And I asked him, when was it over the past 2 years? What's the difference between that almost that you guys achieved and what they have now? And what was there a single moment that you knew that this thing had turned?
Good question.
And absolutely. And I don't know if he said this in your radio interview, but he identified the exact moment. And it was Ohio State 2022, the moment when Roman Wilson gets his helmet ripped off in the end zone.
Yes.
A cornerback, and all of a sudden you've got this phalanx of Michigan offensive linemen walking across and backing him down, just towering over him. They didn't do anything stupid. They didn't take any swings, but they just backed him into a corner and said, this isn't going to happen. I mean, it was obvious by their actions. And Jake Butt said, I looked at that and I knew right then, okay. All right, this is different.
Yeah, the other thing about it's funny. I mean, Jack asked in an interview with Jake. When Jack Elving, he's going to go back to he has trouble with the snap game of 2015. That's what he always. He wrote a book about it. But Jake was awesome because because Jake almost had that game-winning tackle in that game. He did an incredible job, almost making the stop on that unfortunate, disastrous play. But Jake was basically said he knew what a great coach Jim Harbaugh was going to be for Michigan after that game. Because after the game, I mean, it's like it was. I mean, the way Jake described it, those players were in shock.
Hmm.
I mean, literally, they couldn't even process what had gone on. Okay, so he goes in there, and Harbaugh's, finally their coach comes in, and it was like, okay, we just got to put some steel in the spine. That steel in the spine comment came, I think that was the first time that was delivered, and it registered. And that team got back to work that next week, and went on and had a really good season, including a bowl win. So um, Jake knew, right, year number one with Jim Harbaugh, his second to last year, that they got a good coach. And I know there's been some rough patches since that time on and off, but that's when he knew it. It was the right selection.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I just like we said, there was so much to be gained there, and people will say you don't really learn a whole lot, and there's a certain element of truth to that, but there's also the element of you get to see these guys operate, and you learn things from that, just their demeanor, just the way they handle
Yeah.
things. Talked about Harbaugh. How about the guys that Michigan brought? And what was your maybe moment that really caught your attention from the Blake Corum and Chris Jenkins, Mikey Sainristil that were there?
Okay. Well, but let me throw on the media thing. People, oh, it's a waste of time. That's for lazy, cynical media people who are too lazy to go there,
All right.
do their job. Okay. These are media avails that you don't typically get. And it's just being lazy. Okay. I'll get off on that. Okay. I talked about Blake and some of that. Let me talk about Chris Jenkins. This guy, you and I love this guy. He is funny. He is a funny guy. He's so engaging. And he's looking great, man. I mean, he's lost some weight, and he's going to have a great year. But I asked him point blank. I said, okay. I asked him about the night game, and he gave that diplomatic. And he says, "Oh, we'll be ready. I don't care when we play him." And he said he was very eloquent. These guys were all prepared. Okay, and I'll talk about Mikey in a second. But he goes, "Okay." I go, "So, Chris, I got to ask you. Okay, the Ohio State rivalry to you versus the Michigan rivalry, Michigan State rivalry versus Michigan Ohio State rivalry. What's more important to you?" Okay, he started laughing. So I'm going to give you a really lame answer. I mean, he's just so straightforward. It just tells you, I can't answer the question the way I want to answer it. But Chris is a Maryland guy. Okay. I've noticed when I've asked that question, I ask that question all the time at Media Day, whoever the Michigan guy is. I just do because I want to use that bite back here. But I've noticed the in-state guys, well, it's almost like a push at least. Michigan, they're saying the same. But these Ohio State guys, it's Ohio State. And I read between the lines of Chris Jenkins. He's a Maryland guy. His dad was a Maryland guy. From Maryland, and his dad played in Maryland and in the NFL. But in this Ohio State game, I could tell that's the big one. And the rivalry was talked about a lot, and moving the game forward and all that stuff. Um, so anyway, that was interesting. Mikey Sainristil is the serious dude in the room, right? Is there
Mhm.
a huge disparity? I mean, he's a great leader. He's a quiet leader. We talked about that incident where he had the players' lounge locked because players weren't making it clean. Remember, we talked about that a couple of weeks ago. This
Mhm.
is a serious leader. And what struck me about Mikey Sainristil, Chris Jenkins, Blake Corum, is this team is made up of a lot of different personalities, a lot of introvert, more extrovert, just more quiet guys, outgoing guys, but they all blend together. And at the end of Blake's interview, Mikey Sainristil comes over to his podium with Chris, and the two of them interview Blake, right? And so they're dogging him how bad of a basketball player and a ping pong player he is. And it was really funny.
Yeah.
And Mike in his very serious way, and Blake in his bravado. I'll take care of business on the court. It would be scary to play Blake Corum on a basketball court over at the Hoover Street IM, in my opinion. I
Mhm.
think I think he would send you into the brick wall. But it was fun. I love seeing teammates, 4 and 5 year guys who have been through the wars engage with each other. It's a lot of fun to watch.
No doubt about it. That was my exact moment that stuck with me,
Yeah.
because on a couple of things. You're right that Mikey Sainristil is the studious, serious
Oh,
leader.
he's the adult in the room, you
Yeah,
know?
but he can also have fun, as he proved in that moment. Here he is,
Yes, exactly.
and dogging the heck out of Corum, and
Yeah.
great time with it with Chris Jenkins, who is a little more usually bombastic, I guess I would say.
Yeah. But you know
But
what? That's what made it funny. It
oh,
made it funny because it was Mikey, and he's trying to he looked like some NBC guy, like the newscast or something.
and Blake Corum rolls with it,
Oh, he
but
rolls with it.
it
Yes.
kind of peels back the curtain on the kind of relationship that these guys have, and the fun back and forth. That's called chemistry. That's called
That is.
what you need to have on a championship team.
Yeah. Yeah.
Guys obviously have it. So, yeah, great mention of that, and I think that was definitely the thing that stood out to me. Um, we also heard a little bit more about the suspension aspect. 4 games has been what was floated with regard to Jim Harbaugh, but I I also heard that we now know that Jim Harbaugh will still be able to coach this team
Yeah.
during time. I mean, it's not like, okay, no, so we'll see you in October, Jim.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
all week long, you're with them in the meetings, you're with them in the practices and everything else. You just don't get it to show up on Saturday. My question to you is, does that suspension then mean anything?
Um, no, and it's not just because the 4 games are, relatively easy games, definitely easy games, to win, at least on paper. And they might be hard. Who knows? They might have a hiccup, but and make it hard. But in talking to Chris and Blake, that immediately activates. We're going to play for him. And sometimes when a player feels like the program or a coach has been unjustifiably penalized for something, and whatever that is, that it's going to motivate them, going to get their attention, and it'll amp them up a little bit more. But if Jim Harbaugh's in over at Schembechler Hall during the week doing all the prep, that's when they do all the cultivation, the hay's in the barn. When you go to the big house, I mean, it's already done, and it's just execution. And so I think that will be a minor thing, but and maybe a galvanizing thing. But it's going to be, what I'm curious to know is how this plays out. When we hear, is it going to be, first of all, last week it was, it's going to be a 4 game. Talking to Angelique, it's going to be like, it sounds like it's a 4 game thing, and then you hear last couple of days, oh, it might be negotiated down to a 2 game. And but I was worried about, Sharon Moore's name was thrown in there, and maybe a couple other. And I'm like, are we gonna have some, Michigan gonna have some assistants, sitting aside, and then that becomes more impactful because you're going to get the logistics of the sideline compromised a little bit. But I think part of that negotiation, I mean, I don't think that's going to be the part of the package at all. I think those things will go away, and maybe even Harbaugh won't have to serve 4. Maybe he will indeed just have to serve 2.
Yeah, and I believe this: whether it's 4 games or 2, it is not going to have any kind of a significant
Yeah.
effect on Michigan football, because you're still doing all the prep time.
Yep.
You're doing everything that you would be normally doing, except for standing there with the headset on the sidelines. His guys are going to know what he wants in that situation, in those situations, and they certainly shouldn't be playing cliffhangers in those first 2 games. So it's not going to make a difference competitively.
Right.
What
You're
I believe that the NCAA is doing this, if it does, basically to embarrass Jim Harbaugh.
Oh, absolutely, no
Just
question.
okay, you're not gonna play ball completely with us and
Yeah.
down and say, hang your head and said, yes, I did. I bought those burgers and I ordered the code red or whatever. Jim Harbaugh told him he didn't recall, and he
Yeah.
stands by that. And that they want to say, okay, All right, now we're going to put you, take you out of the spotlight for whatever it is, 4 games, 2 games, whatever. It's an attempt to embarrass by a group that is so ineffectual when it is not, it's going after the real lawbreakers, the real rule breakers of college football. And it's been that way for a long, long time. I mean, they want to, they want to uh, make up, I guess, in the public eye for being able to unable to rein in the Alabamas and the
Right.
Ohio States and the Pete Carroll era USCs of the world. But man, don't you cover up when you've bought the burgers.
Yeah, and the thing of it is, I mean, relative to the situation with Tennessee and Urban Meyer, Ohio State, I mean, you can go on and on and on down the list. Relative comparisons of this team did that and they only got this, and then 4-game suspension for a coach. This is why I keep saying if Jim Harbaugh if the Michigan Wolverines win the national championship here in 2023, Harbaugh's going to say, okay, it's going to stick it to the, and say goodbye. I'm going out on going out on a high. I'm national champion. I'm done with this charade. I'm out of here, and hand the keys over to Sharon Moore or whoever, Mike Carr, whoever that may be. So that's why I keep thinking that, because I do indeed think Michigan's going to go 15-0. And I'm sticking with that.
There you go. And no reason to so far you got that right-hand column perfect.
Yeah, I'm sitting here August 1st. I mean, there's a 0 over on the right side, so I'm so far so good, right?
And just you mentioned other coaches. We have heard no mention of any thought of suspensions of Sharon Moore or anyone else. So that is really good news. And I think that plays back into there's no need to try and embarrass those guys. They're going after the head coach, that guy that everybody knows.
That's right.
That's going to have that headset on. So,
yep.
Well, we're going to take just a minute here and have a word from one of our sponsors. Take that moment to shout out sponsor of our Tuesday night recruiting show and a longtime partner of the Wolverine in Lewis Jewelers. Simple question, guys. Is your daughter's engagement ring bigger than that of your wife? If the answer is yes, great news. Lewis Jewelers can help. It's stress-free and easy working with one of their non-commissioned expert trusted advisors, finding that perfect diamond. So stop by today, guys, and fix the family issue. Lewis Jewelers, your diamond store, and so much more since 1921. Visit them at their new location, 300 South Maple Road in Ann Arbor, or online at lewisjewelers.com. That's LewisJewelers.com. That's Lewis Jewelers, where Ann Arbor gets engaged. And of course, we have alluded to it a couple of times, but the Wolverines will be engaged in a night game at Michigan State University come what is it, October
21st.
Tom knows. He's already got it circled on his calendar. I guess when you think about that, we have heard a lot of talk that came out in the wake of the announcement that was going to be a night game. And I hate to even give some of this talk much attention, because I think it was put out there with the intention of getting attention.
Yeah, there you go.
But to the point of, all right, is it going to be a dangerous situation at Michigan State? Do you think it will be after what's happened last year and after all the talk and after all the bitterness is built up? And if in fact you think that it could be, if you're Michigan, what do you do?
Well, I know we don't want to give attention to it. I mean, these are two of my friends, and one's I worked with both of them. One was my producer with Jack Ebling. I'm talking about Mike Valenti and Rico Beard, throwing the nugget out that basically promoting violence, suggesting that if Michigan fans better not wear maize and blue when they come into Spartan Stadium, they're going to be eating a battery. I mean, they're throwing the notion out there you're going to get You're going to be a victim of violence. You're almost promoting it. They always tagline it. No, we don't, not that we don't condone that. That's like saying, no, don't take this wrong. You know what I mean? And Valenti goes like 2 games a year. So why is he talking about? So it really irked me. You think I'm wired right now? You should have seen me talking to Sam Webb about this and a few others on Thursday walking out of Lucas Oil Stadium. I just think it's reckless. I think it's irresponsible, and that's all I'm going to say about it. But I'm just saying. My point is, if your intention is you're going to try to intimidate Michigan fans from showing up at Spartan Stadium, you're barking up the wrong tree. That's not going to happen. They will show up strong. They'll find their way in there. And what happens on the players will be secured. Yeah, the stands. Maybe you're more vulnerable as a fan. But if you're trying to make the Spartan Stadium look like the Oakland Raiders or Ohio State, I don't think it's going to happen. Particularly when we see what happens on the field, because I think Michigan's going to clock Michigan State at least by the second half. I think it might be tight for one half, and then all of a sudden now those fans are going to lean the stands, and they're so that whole violence thing I think will be gone. But just throwing that nugget out really irritated me, especially when violence is such a talk piece these days on all levels, all fronts in news pegs these days. I thought it was hideous. And yet Rico said on press pass, yeah, but we got 1 million hits. Yeah, that's why you're hired. It's all about getting attention.
Yeah.
And I think that's just ridiculous. And once again, irresponsible.
That sounds like lying about an election. I remember one famous comment that after someone was caught in a lie and said, we won, didn't we? It's unconscionable that you do thing where the end automatically justifies the means. Come on.
Yeah.
I don't know. I understand it's the way of the world these days with media, but it shouldn't be.
Yeah, it shouldn't be. And it's just dangerous. I don't think we should do that kind of. That's just my opinion. I know the show's doing great, and we probably should stop talking about him. So I'm sorry I went on about it and gave him that attention, but it had to be addressed.
Okay.
Therapeutically, I had to get off my chest. I did a little bit on press pass on Sunday night. It got kind of ugly. I don't like going down and having that mean spirit come out of me. It's there, and with Rico, we had kind of a wicked 30 seconds to a minute there going at it. I don't want to go so I don't like it anymore.
As long as you didn't catch a battery in the teeth.
It's a football game, for God's sakes.
It's
a college football game. And none of us are on. There's 110 players in each program, whatever. That's their game. Let's keep things in perspective.
I will say this: last year's incident happened because Michigan State was able to isolate a couple of Michigan players. I know the answer to that will be, well, they ran up the tunnel early.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, they Rico and Valenti make Michigan State. The reason Michigan State fans are going to beat up Michigan fans is because they were the victim. See, they look at themselves as the victim last year, 100% the victim.
Unreal.
For the 8 suspensions.
You had
blah blah blah. So they're playing the victim card.
You had kids trying to get up that tunnel. One because he was injured and getting treatment. The other so he could see his dad who was in from out of state before he had to leave.
Right.
Had an assault. That's what you had. So, in terms of what you do this year, I think Michigan has to emphasize to their team, we don't go anywhere without a bunch of us.
Well, that tunnel is going to be secure. I mean, that tunnel is going to be 100% secure. I'm not, this issue is nothing to do with players on either team. This issue is in the tailgates, along Shaw Lane and all that stuff, Michigan fans coming in and how that rolls out pregame. When you got now alcohol is now going to be able to be sold at Spartan Stadium, and it's going to be sold at Spartan Stadium. It's a 7:30 kick. The first time Michigan plays Michigan State at night, not 3:30, evolves into darkness at game is over at 7:30, but it starts at 7:30. So let's be real. There's going to be some wired people and some, idiotic people acting stupid. Okay. So there's a recipe for some mishaps indeed.
I think Michigan comes in with a significant show of security presence around that football team. And the other thing
Oh,
is,
they will. They will. Absolutely, they will.
but you still, as a fan going to that game, probably not a good idea to go on your own. Meet up with some like-minded people and travel in groups.
Yeah, but do you wear? But do you? I mean, Valenti was taught to say, "Don't. You better not wear maize and blue. Don't bring your kids. Don't bring. You know, you better not wear maize and blue, or you're gonna be eating battery.
Well, that's a pathetic.
Whatever that means. I never. What does that mean?
I mean, it's a pathetic threat
Yeah,
that is almost encouraging acts of violence. And
absolutely. It's
no,
promoting the concept and actually projecting it, predicting it, and being. You know what? Not that I condone it, but he seems to be all right with.
yeah.
That he likes the concept that they're going to be too scared to show up. Yeah, that's the way it is. That's
All right. Well, enough of that.
Right.
We're heading down the home stretch here. We got a
Yeah.
couple more. Which Michigan assistant coach do you see having the toughest job this coming fall?
That's a hard question.
That makes it a good question.
That's a great question. Okay. And you know what? I can't just pick one. I mean, it's all defense. Okay. I'm not even the offensive guys. You're not going to be part of this discussion. There's one guy, Steve Clinkscale. Because there's a position that's up in the air at that one corner slot, and so there's still that's one part of it. I'm just the defense will continue to scare me for going on 2 to 3 decades in big games, going back to the 2006 Michigan game or Michigan Ohio State game when Ron English had this great defense, and all of a sudden they get exploited. So I'm worried about the defense. Will they be exploited when they get further into the schedule? Ohio State, maybe even at Penn State, or in the CFP, when all of a sudden you have the speed that we haven't spin around, and are we going to be exploited? So the secondary, I'm concerned about that, giving up big plays. It happened last year against TCU. And then Chris Partridge comes back into the program. When someone leaves and then comes back, you also wonder how's that going to work out. Chris Partridge, linebackers. Despite I'm not going to say Mike Elson in this discussion because his D line is so friggin' deep. I mean, my God, he got 8 guys rotating it. He'll be just fine in his role. But Chris Partridge, linebacker is not deep. Is that an accurate statement in your mind? It's not deep. It's good. Experience, but it's not deep.
I would say it is getting deeper. It certainly got deeper via the transfer portal, and there are guys that, the Jimmy Rolders of the world that are, that I think we're in the developmental stage still are, and I think that they're going to be all right there. But
I think it'll be all right, but it's an issue. And then the other guys. So I have 3 coaches. I got to mention Jesse Minter. He has to make the right decisions. He has to make the right decisions in big games. So the pressure to me for this Michigan team to reach the ultimate goal is their defense. Yeah, in my mind, against speed, because it's happened like we talked about. Sometimes in Michigan looks, their defense is great, like 2003. And they go out in USC and USC runs by them like they're parked on the side of the road. I mean, after a Big Ten championship team in 2003 outright. And that just lingers with me. I want to see the defense deliver when it's like it delivered in the 88 season. It delivered big time. And the 85 team. Those 2 defenses to me, that's the creme de la creme of Michigan defense.
Absolutely. And for those same reasons, those big moments you were talking about, my answer to the question was Jesse Minter, because he's the one ultimately responsible and flipping the switches as to, okay, what happened against TCU? How do we fix it? How do we not replicate that sort of letdown in the most crucial moments of the game, with a full understanding that 14 of those points didn't come off the defense. There were still enough that you have to deal with it. And I would say 1A there would be Sharon Moore, who now is running that offense. Yes, he's got a lot of parts, but he's got to come up with a way to creatively keep Corum and Edwards going at the same time a lot of times, and just
in the red zone, mind you.
It works. Yes, absolutely. All right, we're right down to it. Tom's take, our final segment, as always. Tom, what do you have for us?
Well, for me, the big concern about this Michigan team moving forward is how they're handling all this hype. I mean, we're seeing they're picked to win the Big Ten, and so they're in a new realm of. There's a lot of expectations. I mean, everybody, high profile media is picking Michigan. So I think the leadership is going to be. I think they'll do fine, but that's just a new. I mean, never had those expectations, like I said, since the 1976 team having this many, one or two. So how they handle that, to me, is a glaring issue that, and we won't know for a while, but that's a wild card variable that I'm concerned about. I'm concerned about that. These are concerns. The other concern is basically staying healthy. I mean, when do you take JJ McCarthy out of these early games? Okay, I mean, how you gotta have to make some decisions in these potential blowouts early on, and when's it? What I mean, Jim Harbaugh typically plays his starters deep into the game, even 4 and 5 touchdown differentials. Is when you pull JJ out, can you pull him? Can you pull him out at halftime? Does he get enough reps? These are tough decisions Michigan's going to have, because last thing you want to do is have an injury and have an injury happen in the third quarter of the UNLV game, and you're going to be hearing about it forever. So does that concern you? Well, and how do you think, John, that they're going to approach that?
Well, I just think you have to certainly have that first unit on there enough to establish a rhythm in regular ball games. But if you're up at halftime significantly, and you give them, a lot of the standard has been give them the first series,
yes,
third quarter, and if you're up by more than 3 touchdowns, hey, pull them back off.
I mean, we see that, John, at the quarterback. But sometimes when I'm looking out there in these games, I'm looking at a defense that has some ones and definitely twos into the fourth quarter. I mean, there's some of the ones on defense are in there the whole third quarter. And as to develop the depth, I hope that they get more kids involved in the rotation. Now, I'm not smart enough to figure out how much game time ones need to have to keep in rhythm. But I'm going back to my other worry concern. If you wake at night, this Michigan team, can they stay healthy? So you're not having a lingering injury that goes on all season long that becomes a factor in how they do.
All right. That goes right back to my old basis point that you do not have a 2023 schedule that wows the socks off of the home fans, but you have a great 2023 schedule from the standpoint of player development early on.
Okay.
Of keeping guys healthier, all of those sorts of things. So when you get into the meat of the Big Ten schedule, you're ready to go.
Okay. So with that being said, then to bring those guys out earlier than you normally do.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying that Harbaugh plays as brings them out real. I mean, but you've noticed it. They're out there longer than you think. They're up. They're up 42 points, and I'm seeing a couple ones out there.
Yep.
It doesn't matter. I'm at least once. It doesn't make any sense. Or 3 or 4 ones. I mean, I just like, why is this going on?
Yeah. Well, time to call it at that point, and it's time to call it in this Wolverine Live. Great. Fun discussion. I appreciate you, Tom, and we will do this again next week. We have, I believe, including this one, 4 more, or no, not including this one, 4 more Tuesdays to go before part of the season. So we'll have it all figured out by then.
Oh yeah. Then when we start talking about what happened the week before, then it's muscle. I mean, we're just rolling at it, and critiquing, and it's a lot of fun. Always, it's a privilege to be on here with you, John. Thanks so much for having me on.
All right. And happy birthday.
All right. Thank you, JV.